This is the
Five Stars
podcast.
Let me talk to you.
Hi.
So, what do you guys want to talk about? Tell me we're not telling lies.
Thanks, guys. Back to you.
You know, I am really starting to gain an appreciation for the people that use creatine powder. Tony, man, I used to be a skeptic. I typically am. But I've been taking that stuff for a few weeks now, and I'm really feeling the difference at the gym. Not just the gym, but energy levels, period. And it really doesn't take a whole lot. An 8-ounce bottle of water with a scoop of that powder, and it really does the trick. Half hour, 45 minutes before a workout. So creatine powder, it gets the 5-star stamp of approval. Sometimes when I watch these classic Raws, there's a part of me that wants to take an extra scoop of that stuff. Try to get me through the review. It's, you know, it's one of those things, and I really noticed it after watching the show this week. The shows are better in the sense of there's a lot more to talk about. Doesn't mean it's all good, but, you know, compared to the 1993 to mid to late 1996 Raws we reviewed, you know, the shows aren't a chore to get through like they've been for going on 4 years of us doing these Raw recaps. I mean, there were stages of late 96 where you could see things turning around for the better, but the shows were still consistently boring, downright abysmal at times. You know, occasionally you would get the Bret Austin interaction or Taker Mankind, and you're like, at least they're attempting to turn things around. Right now, it's at the point where I'm noticing the formatting change with things, and of course, we all know who's heavily involved in that process. But on the whole, even though they've added the extra hour and there's more content to sift through, I'm not ripping my hair out by the end of the show. Doesn't make me want to jump out a 2-story building with having to review meaningless squashes for 60 minutes straight. So it is a vast improvement for what it's worth. We'll talk about all that in a minute. But I do want to first thank everybody that comes back to check out the 5 Starr Wrestling Report every week. As you all know, we are the wrestling podcast nobody knows but everybody needs. YouTube and Rumble on Mondays and Fridays. At one point, I would have used the phrase every Monday and Friday, but as you can see, based on how things have gone in 2026, that's becoming less and less reliable, mainly due to my busy schedule. I'm trying, though. I'm still here and still doing this for the love of the sport. Classic wrestling coverage. My escape from the real world, so to speak. I've got like 4 books lined up that I'm currently reading, trying to read. All wrestling related. I'm still somewhat passionate about this business, even if the majority of the modern product sucks balls and does nothing to inspire me to want to engage with anything on Mondays or Wednesdays. Well, I guess SmackDown is still on Fridays too, right? Of course, everything is streamed now, by and large. It's all a complete mess. And so is a lot of what's happening with the WWF in 1997. But at least it's a mess worth going back and having a good laugh over. So why don't we venture into the cesspool and see what we uncover on this week's installment of Raw is War. All right. So remember how last week's show was like 98% Austin and the Hart Foundation? And about 2% everything else? Well, guess what this week was a continuation of? Virtually the same cast of 5 or so people. You also may recollect the big story surrounding last week was Bret and Austin working to try to cripple one another and cart the other out of the building in an ambulance. By the end of the show, we found out that Austin was the victim of that crippling after he got thrown off the stage onto the concrete. Keep that in mind for later on in the program. And this is on top of like 40 other things that happened during the final 3 minutes of airtime. And it was all recapped in the opening chyron, in case you needed a quick refresher. And so we begin this week with the Hart Foundation all coming out for a promo. And within a matter of seconds of them entering the ring, they queued up purple mood lighting to set the scene. Because we have to make everything theatrical in presentation now. So Bret begins by thanking all of his fans and pissing on his haters. And as he was talking about the Austin situation from the other week, this is a direct quote I'm about to mention. To the people that are upset about what the Hart Foundation did to Austin by dumping him off the stage last week, quote, "Tough titty, said the kitty." You know, hearing something like that from Bret Hart, it's not even so much the act of him saying the word titty that caught me off guard. It was the fact that he said that and never broke kayfabe. I don't know if he was directly told to say that or if he just thought of that line spur of the moment. Regardless, it was not a quote I was expecting to come from Bret Hart. By the way, is that actually a metaphor? Do people say, "Tough titties, said the kitty"? The fuck is that supposed to even mean? Are felines notorious for having tough tits? Or am I just being a spurg and reading way too much into something trivial? I mean, that was probably the most notable part of the segment. He spent a few more minutes glossing up the rest of the group until he started ripping into Austin and the fans. I believe he called Austin a broken pile of heaping broken bones. Also referred to him as a hyena again, which has become Bret's go-to insult for animals. What is it with Bret's obsession with hyenas? I mean, they're not beautiful creatures by any stretch of the imagination, but I can think of like 10 uglier animal breeds than that. Have you seen pictures of mole rats? Those things look like the spawn of Satan. I'm glazing over a lot of stuff here, but it's really not anything worth harping on. He eventually promised that Shawn Michaels would receive the same treatment that Austin did. Basically said that if Shawn wants to interject himself in Hart Foundation business, they'll meet him halfway and finish the job they started with Austin. Formulaic booking for this new and improved Raw format. They set up the main story for the night. The Hart Foundation are targeting HBK. There's also the cliffhanger of whether or not Austin would make a cameo. So I had no issues with this. And then we went to Ahmed Johnson versus Rockabilly. I will give you all the chance to chime in with the answer to the question I'm about to ask. Was this match bowling shoe ugly? Note the participants involved. Before you ask, no, I have no idea why Ahmed was out there wrestling in black sweatpants. My presumption is that his baggage may have got lost at the airport. And or he just didn't feel like wearing trunks for this particular occasion. My favorite part of this was when they went to pitch to a split screen with Farouk, and it was right when Billy cut off Ahmed and started working him over for the heat. So Vince had to go, well, Farouk, bet you're thoroughly impressed with Ahmed Johnson as of late. Well, up until that last maneuver. Because even though Ahmed is clearly the focal point of the story they're trying to build up between him and the nation, they still had to have Billy Gunn get 2 minutes of heat in this 3-minute squash. And then, of course, for absolutely no discernible reason other than we need to have a DQ finish on this show for shits and giggles, the honky-tonk man tried to hit the ring with a guitar, but Ahmed cut him off and then broke it over Billy's head for the disqualification. So I believe that brings Billy's win-loss record to 1 win and 3 losses under this new Rockabilly gimmick. Oh, and naturally, his 1 win, of course it came as a result of a DQ. But according to Russo logic, that doesn't matter. DQ schmeq, right? Nobody's going to notice. Right. By the way, did you all know there's a pay-per-view on Sunday? I believe this segment was the first time anybody on commentary drew attention to the fact that In Your House is in 6 days. What's on the card? Where's it at? Does anybody remotely give a shit? All of these questions I do not have good answers for. The only thing I know for sure is that Austin is wrestling Taker for the WWF title. And I think Ahmed Johnson is wrestling the Nation in that gauntlet match they've been teasing for like a month and a half. Is that not enticing? Are you not frothing at the mouth to see that pay-per-view? From there, we had the Hart Foundation searching the men's dressing room for Shawn. Highlight of which was Owen's quote right before they cut the feed, where he goes, "He must be in the women's washroom." That alone made that 30-second pre-tape totally worth it. Otherwise, it would have been completely pointless. We also had another Ken Shamrock promo package. And unlike last week, where they essentially spent like half the video hyping up a feud between him and Mike Tyson that never happened, here they at least bothered to mention Vader's name for more than 5 seconds. They also went more in depth into his personality and family life. It was mostly footage of him coaching his son's Little League baseball team, which I can say as somebody who did Little League baseball for a few years as a kid, having a coach like Ken Shamrock, That is a recipe for whipping young kids into shape in a hurry. Do not fuck with Coach Ken. That's a life hack for anybody, child or adult. Good video, though. Ken's promo sucked, but that isn't anything we haven't already talked about before. Yeah, Shamrock excelled at many things during his run in the WWF. Promo ability, definitely at the bottom of that list. And that took us to Vader's match with Goldust, with Shamrock on commentary. See my previous comments about Shamrock's talking ability. 'Twas no good. I was just happy to see Goldust wrestling somebody other than fucking Hunter for a change. We're going to revisit the Goldust talking point in a second here, but it is surprising going back and seeing him being used as enhancement fodder. Like, you look at the timeline from the signature spot he got on the WrestleMania card like a month and a half ago. Now he's out there getting beaten by Vader in a 5-minute TV squash. Clean, by the way. I mean, I really don't have much else to say about the match. They are doing Shamrock and Vader at the pay-per-view, which I don't have any personal fond memories of. I know Shamrock wins, but that's about it. Apparently it's no DQ, anything goes. I'm really struggling to remember what the hell they do with Vader from now until his contract expires. And they really don't do much of anything with him, correct? I think he gets involved briefly in the whole Team Canada stuff in the lead up to Survivor Series, but I honestly couldn't tell you shit from apple butter about how that all goes down. Everything post SummerSlam 96 with him is a complete blur in terms of memorable Vader moments in the WWF, which is also a conversation we've had numerous times. And you know who's responsible for that demise. But getting back to Goldust for a minute, or should I say, Dustin Runnels, which was the story of this pre-tape they aired on him. Now that we're trying to blur the lines between reality and fake, this is where a lot of Russo's brain trust ideas were seeping through. And you know, it's one of those things where watching it in 2026, it registers a lot differently than it does for anybody that still lives in the anti-kayfabe break bubble. I don't know how else to describe it. The people that oppose the fourth wall breaking, you know, trying to protect the business at all costs and not expose the real identities of the people behind the gimmicks. I understand we're far beyond the point of trying to protect the business now, and it's been exposed for damn near 40-something years. The idea behind the video was to go more in depth on who Dustin was as a person, as opposed to anything related to the Goldust gimmick. You know, they drew attention to him being Dusty's son, the fact that he was sick of living in his dad's shadow and wanted to break out as his own personality, which is how he adopted the Goldust moniker, how it was a way for him to stand out on his own and be his own man, basically. And it's just one of those things where they tried to explain something that I don't think really needed to be explained. Of course, there's also the big glaring issue, which I'll talk about momentarily, but existentially, Again, it's this Russo-driven mentality where we have to constantly go behind the curtain and be insider. We got to appeal to the smart crowd because they're the prime demographic that loves the shoot-style element of the business. I'm using jingoisms to try to drive home a point. And as we found out over time, I think we can all agree, the business operated a lot better when the marks were in the seats, as opposed to being in the ring, for lack of better terms. And it was this kind of stuff that escalated that problem, unfortunately. Why did we need to do this? Like, what purpose did it serve? You think about the timing of it. It's been well over a year since the Goldust character debuted. He's only been de-escalated down the card as time has gone on. It's not like people were clamoring for the inside scoop on who Dustin Runnels was. We all knew he was Dusty's son. Every smart mark in the world could tell you that. It was just unnecessarily redundant. But even overlooking some of my personal thoughts on the video, it also doesn't address the main problem with when they aired the video. Literally 30 seconds after we just saw them job out Goldust flat in the middle of the ring to Vader. Like, could you be any more tone deaf? At the same time, you're trying to get the people to care about the Dustin/Goldust story, his chronicles, so to speak. Did you have to job him out less than 5 minutes prior like a complete schmuck? Like, what the fuck is going on here? That'd be like debuting Billy Gunn with a goofy guitar player gimmick and then jobbing him out in his first match. Oh, wait a minute. Shit. Oh, you catch my drift. There's more to come with the Goldust narrative, by the way. Stay tuned next week for part 2. Meanwhile, the Hart Foundation were hanging around a bathroom waiting to jump Shawn. Talk about a change of pace. We go from super serious background video on Dustin Runnels to more bathroom humor. Because we can't get enough of that shit. By the way, they never actually show Shawn here. Obviously, because it wasn't him. They just had the heels beat the shit out of some random long-haired fuck. Realized it wasn't him. And then kept beating him up anyway. Which I laughed at, yes. But it was still incredibly stupid. And then they just moved on and pitched back to the ring after the Break for a Nation promo. Never mind that poor innocent man that was just trying to take a piss. He was collateral damage. Can't belabor that point. What we really needed to see was Crush beating up a pair of enhancement guys in a gauntlet match. Talk about the definition of turn the channel heat. Someone got the brilliant idea of, let's put Crush in the ring for 4 minutes with job guys. That'll get the people flipping over to watch Raw. If by flip you mean flipping the bird and then switching back to watching Nitro, then yes, They indeed flipped. So Crush beat up 2 guys. And when the third came out, it ended up being Ahmed Johnson in a mask and hoodie. He immediately hit Crush with a Pearl River plunge and got the pinfall. So at least something moderately decent came out of it. And by that I mean slightly more exciting than watching Crush work. Which are... well, there are many more exciting things than watching Crush work. Such as paint drying, for example. And that was followed with the Hart Foundation searching for Shawn in the parking lot. This is where I determined, at this particular point in the show, this whole Hart Foundation trying to hunt down Shawn, it is literally Scooby Doo levels of comedy. It wasn't bad enough that they were raiding the locker rooms and jumping innocent people in the bathroom. Now they got Davey Boy and Neidhart looking under trucks. Brett literally yelled to Owen, "Search in those barrels." He said that. Yeah, like Shawn was just hiding inside a fucking barrel in the parking lot for no reason. Waiting to pop out and jump the Hart Foundation with a gimmick or something. It's like, what the hell am I watching? It's comically over the top to the point where you know that everybody involved knows it's horse shit. At this point, they're just yucking it up for the camera. Which I don't blame them. I'd have done the same thing. Search in those barrels, Owen. Give me a break. And so that brought us to the top of hour 2, where things did not get any less hokey, by the way. Take, for example, with how they started the top of the hour. After multiple segments of the Hart Foundation tipping over cars and dismantling the entire building looking for Shawn, well, they just cue up Shawn's music and there he was. In the flesh. Just cruising down to the ring like normal. I have to wonder how big this arena was to buy the idea that the Hart Foundation spent a full hour ineffectively hunting down Shawn Michaels. Maybe he was hiding in a barrel. So he comes down and does an interview with Vince. I did appreciate that they had somebody moderating a promo segment this time instead of letting the boys freely talk, which is something they've been doing more consistently now. Shawn talked about the idea that Austin wanted to take on the Hart Foundation by himself, but in the case that he finds himself standing in the ring with Shawn to help, you should know that Shawn's not doing it for Austin's benefit. He's doing it for his own personal benefit. And he started sucking up to all the fans, since the hot topic now is tearing down everybody and admonishing the fans for how terrible they are. Basically playing into Brett's playbook. Says the Hart Foundation might run in a pack, but the clique runs in a herd. And if they wanted Shawn bad enough, they'd be out here right now doing something about it. Well, before I talk about the Brett stuff, he did bring up a timetable for his return. Said it'll be the King of the Ring pay-per-view in June. Now that his leg is healed up. Or almost healed up. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And as far as Brett's concerned, So the people are fed up with this constant griping and complaining. And if Shawn has to single-handedly dismantle all members of the Hart Foundation to get to Brett, then so be it. It was... It was a Shawn Michaels promo. Can't really tear it down too much. At least here he wasn't trying to go into business for himself and pull out a bunch of insider behind the curtain BS to push a narrative. I mean, this was mostly storyline driven material. The thing is, I sort of know the direction they're going with Shawn as they lead up to his return to the June pay-per-view. From what I remember, it's all centered around beef between him and Austin. But I also seem to recall, don't he and Austin end up beating Owen and Davey to win the tag belts beforehand? Or did that happen after the King of the Ring pay-per-view? Because I know Shawn is about to wrestle relatively soon. I had sworn that he came back well before the King of the Ring. But maybe that's my memory slipping me again. Haven't really thought all that deeply about this particular time period in well over 15 to 20 years. Also can't neglect the fact that we're coming up on the infamous backstage incident with Brett and Shawn getting into a legit fight. The one that resulted in Shawn getting a big chunk of his hair pulled out. And I think Shawn actually walked out for a brief window right as they were coming up on the pay-per-view. Then he came back and ended up working with Austin. A lot of drama unfolding as we're entering the next phase of the Shawn Brett saga. And it's only getting worse from here. And so directly coming out of that promo, Brett and Pillman showed up on the big screen to do a heel promo on Shawn, with Brett claiming that Shawn's been running around no-selling his knee pretty frequently, since he doesn't seem to be favoring any injury at this point. If he's got the jam, he should accept Neidhart's challenge for a fight right here and right now. So out comes Neidhart in street clothes. It's the first time we're actually seeing Neidhart get physical in a WWF ring since, well, right before he abruptly left the company in late '94. And of course, the whole thing was a giant ruse so the rest of the Hart Foundation could come out and attack Shawn. Only for Shawn to get bailed out by the Road Warriors, who were allegedly waiting in the wings to make this save. In all fairness, they were scheduled to wrestle in the next segment, so it is easy enough to buy that they were hanging around Gorilla and figured, well, someone's got to bail this dumbass out. Why not us? It was an odd choice for Hawk and Animal to come out in singlets. It was not the kind of attire I expected the Road Warriors to come dressed in. It was like seeing Ahmed wrestle in sweatpants. You see it and you're like, huh. Well, that's a bit peculiar. I will say, not to get too bogged down with the whole Neidhart thing, it's a lot like the Brian Pillman situation where they utilized him in sparse roles when it came to physicality. When he did wrestle, it was mostly like six-man tags where they could hide him in the background a lot of the time. Because let's be honest, Jim Neidhart wasn't anything to write home about when he was wrestling several years ago full-time. Most of his matches stunk to high heaven. In 1997, he was practically a utility player. He was an important part to the group, but not really the kind of guy you wanted to see work long competitive matches. Put it that way. But getting back to the Road Warriors for a few minutes, they took on Furnace and LaFawn this week. They're still doing this heel storyline with Furnace and LaFawn where they're angry that the fans don't give a shit about them. How they're disrespected and not treated as equals like the rest of the tag division. It's not getting them any more or less over. The fans are still ambivalent about their existence. They got to work over Animal for the heat here. There was a spot where they legitimately almost broke the referee's leg. They went to give Animal a double suplex, and right as they were hoisting Animal overhead, both of his feet ended up clipping the back of the ref's knee. Whew. Another couple of inches, and that could have ended horribly. The thing is, at first, he was selling it like he had actually gotten hurt. But then he was fine like a minute later. So maybe he was trying to sell it initially and they decided against it. I don't know. Like I said, it could have ended horribly. Also, the trend of bad booking with the Legion of Doom continues, as they end up running a distraction with Owen and Davey to cost the Road Warriors a match. Because it's not bad enough that the Road Warriors had to lose to the fucking Headbangers not that long ago. Now they're doing jobs to Furnace and LaFawn. Jesus H. Christ. I know I've talked about this a million times, but I have to reiterate it. You know what booking model never got over with the Road Warriors throughout any part of their history? 50-50 booking with wins and losses. Guess what the WWF was doing with them in 1997? When they were still actually over and still had a huge following at that stage of their careers. Unreal. And then, of course, it's immediately to the back, Mike Tenay style, to show the Hart Foundation brawling in the locker room with Shawn, only for them to get run off by Austin. Okay, couple of things. Number one, everything I just bitched about with the Road Warriors booking, I stand by all of that. They were so poorly mistreated during their run in the late 90s. It's criminal with the way they were used. Second thing, probably more consequential to the talking point here, you did not mishear me. They did a brawl with the Hart Foundation and Shawn Michaels, and he was saved by Stone Cold. Yes, Stone Cold Steve Austin made a run-in appearance during a random backstage brawl in the middle of Hour 2 on Raw. After he was thrown off a stage and loaded into an ambulance 1 week ago, a hospital angle. Now he's just back like everything is perfectly normal. No bruising, no injury sustained. He's 100% all of a sudden. It's like, I mean, if you were going to have Austin show up this week, if you absolutely had to have him make an appearance on the show, you couldn't save it for the end. Do like a big reveal in the last 2 minutes. You had to blow it off in a 30-second backstage segment that you cut away from almost immediately after cutting to it. Say it with me, folks. Crash TV booking. The detriment to all future styles of booking throughout wrestling history. Let's cram in as much shit as we possibly can into 2 hours and make everything so condensed and so fast-paced that nothing has a chance to settle properly. The Attitude Era in a nutshell. Also, Tony Khan's booking of AEW. They're one and the same. And so at this point, now that we're well into hour 2, why not? May as well get an on-screen appearance from our WWF champion, right? I mean, he still technically qualifies as the top guy in the company. On paper, it would seem. It is a literal repeat of what we talked about the other week. The fact that they waited almost 3/4 of the way into the program to actually show The Undertaker on camera, despite that he is the champion. And this is something I haven't even drawn attention to yet, but they kept bringing this up in various segments throughout the night, that somebody had stolen The Undertaker's WWF championship. Yeah, they apparently just waltzed into the locker room, grabbed the belt when Taker was doing whatever dead people do, I guess. And now the belt is being held hostage by a mystery assailant. So he comes out and basically says that whoever stole his belt will be punished and destroyed. Then he vowed that it would be a cold day in hell before Austin becomes the champion. I believe that is also the tagline for In Your House. And that was basically done and over with in about 2 minutes. So to recap, not only did they once again wait until well into hour 2 for the WWF champion to make an on-screen appearance, but then he goes out there, gets like 2 minutes of promo time, and then they come back to get set for the main event. I'm not insinuating that they should be spamming their world champion over the entire show, but I think there's something to be said about devoting 99% of your program to the same several sets of guys, but then reducing your WWF champion to less than 5 minutes of overall screen time. That's a pretty notable imbalance, don't you think? Just throwing it out there. And so the main event is Stone Cold versus the British Bulldog. Vince had casually mentioned that Austin took a nasty fall off the stage the other week. He was hit with a crutch and pushed by another man, Vince. Saying that he fell is a bit of an understatement, don't you think? Also, it should be noted, and before y'all dogpile on me, yes, I know this is fake and or predetermined, but let's try and suspend disbelief for more than 5 fucking seconds here, just to drive home a point. Assuming that they were going to even bother to have Austin sell getting driven off a staging platform 1 week ago, God forbid he take a week off before actually showing back up again. Try to make that angle look somewhat legit. Are we also to presume that they booked Austin for the TV main event this week in advance, knowing that he was going to be 100%? They went through all of that just to have Austin come back and wrestle the TV main event the following week. Attention to detail that was a severely lacking piece of the pie this week. So they had the match, which was fine. It was a competently put together wrestling match. If you're not a fan of chin locks, the middle portion was probably a turnoff in more ways than one. Austin won with a stunner, which was... I mean, the only reason I would use the word surprising, it was a match involving the Hart Foundation. You would think out of anybody on the roster they were trying to protect at this point, it would be these guys. Also taking into account that Davey is still technically the European champion. And with the amount of bullshit DQ finishes we've seen with the WWF as of late, of all matches not to do a DQ in, they chose this one. So Austin goes over and then is immediately shit-canned by the heels. And of course, as they're beating Austin down, they show Owen smacking Austin across the back with the WWF title. Yeah, mystery solved. The identity of who stole Taker's belt. A show-running theme. Naturally, it had to be the ultimate ribber in the WWF. The guy that had the reputation for being a prankster. It'd be funny if it wasn't actually story-related and Owen just decided to troll The Undertaker by stealing his belt. And that also began the series of run-ins from like 50 different guys. You had the Road Warriors out there getting involved. Furnace and LaFawn came down. Shawn Michaels ran out and joined the fray. And then finally, they do the blackout so Taker could show up in the ring and start going after the Hart Foundation. And eventually, all the babyfaces managed to send the heels fleeing to set up the next part of the segment, which involved Taker and Austin going at it for a few minutes. And it was just one of those things where, right as they were getting ready to end the show, the visual of seeing The Undertaker and Austin go at it, it was like, even though I was already aware that the main event for the pay-per-view was Taker versus Austin for the title, thinking back to how we even got to this point over the last several weeks, the build to this match has been absolutely atrocious. I mean, you think, everything with Austin's involvement on TV over the last how many weeks, it's all been about him wanting to get his hands on Brett and the Hart Foundation. Then they randomly at some point announced that Austin would be wrestling The Undertaker for the title at In Your House. And outside a couple intermediate brawl segments between them, that's the only build to Taker versus Austin we've seen. I'm still not entirely sure how Austin got this title shot. When you look at it on paper, it's basically a babyface title match. There's just a lot of questionable things in the lead up to this pay-per-view. Like, I'm an advocate of layered stories when you can do it, but they're taking the layered story component to the extreme. But the pay-per-view review will be next week. We'll see how much of that I even want to document. As of this point, without actually going to the wiki page to look at the full card, I believe we only have like 2 or 3 matches actually announced. Assuming there will be a couple other add-ons. I don't even know what the hell those would be. Probably nothing of great substance. I mean, the selling point for that thing is a complete buffer feud between 2 guys who are feuding insofar as they're both involved in Hart Foundation business. Even though they're both fighting heels. But they still hate each other because something 50 Shades of Grey, something there's no such thing as baby faces and heels. Something bro. See what I'm getting at? Whatever. We'll see if I even want to do a Retro Raw review next week. Depending on how in-depth I get with the pay-per-view analysis. But that'll be something we talk about in a week. Folks, for now I want to thank everybody that comes back to check out the show every week. We will be back for a Friday podcast this coming week. I did watch WCW in Mid-South. Actually, at this point, I still haven't watched Mid-South. I still have to do that. But I wanted to get the Raw recording out of the way first. A lot I'm trying to track right now. And, it's going to be a busy Sunday schedule for me. I know that. Long day. But that's all right. But I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for watching, and y'all take care. Peace out.